my thinking at a particular stage was that the best thing I could do for anyone was to bring them to hear from Srila Guru Maharaj. And I thought, if they do, what more can I offer them than that? If I can somehow arrange that, bring them in connection with him, that'll be good for them, and I'll be there too, hearing what Guru Maharaj says. And so with great confidence and joy and verve, I would bring God brothers and God sisters to the lotus feet of Srila Guru Maharaj. And after bringing one such person, Srila Gurudev, he took us all, at the end of Guru Maharaj's talk, took us all downstairs for a prasadam. And then the idea was, after taking the prasadam, to return to Mayapur. But at the end of the prasadam, Gurudev came and he said, Guru Maharaj wants to see you again. That was very unusual. So we went back upstairs, like 3 of us, 4 of us, to see Guru Maharaj. And Guru Maharaj said, I was thinking, your earnestness to serve Mahaprabhu is so great that he has personally supplied this prasadam. So I asked Govinda Maharaj to set some aside for me. I'm also taking that. That's how Guru Maharaj was thinking. And then the one who was astonished said, oh, thank you so much. And Guru Maharaj said, thank you. He said, thank you, that doesn't sit well with me. Because he said, that presupposes 2 parties. And when these 2 parties with separate interest, when one party gets something from the other party, they say, thank you. And then Anante Sachidananda Chidatmani, the yogis, they're experiencing a pleasure that is higher than the sort of pleasure that one experiences in this world from erotic sensual activity. The Brahmanandis, their experience, the pleasure of Brahmananda, 10 million times greater than sensuous pleasure. If you multiply the pleasure of Brahmananda 1 trillion-fold, it's not equivalent to a drop of the pleasure of Krishna Bhakti. That's a statement from Rupa Goswami. The senses, the mind, the intelligence, according to Guru Maharaj, all shadow representations of the spiritual aspect of the same. And that will be achieved through freedom for the senses or freedom from the senses. So in Bhagavad Gita, we hear Krishna say, Bhumir apo anulo vayu kam manu buddhir evacha ahankara ityame bina prakriti rashtadha. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. He said, these are my inferior energy. Then he said, and that's so, mind, intelligence, inferior. And jiva bhuta, apareyam itastvanyam prakritim vidime param. Jiva is a para prakriti, superior energy to all of those things. Without controlled senses, there's no question of spontaneous love. We'll project that our experience of mundane love, we'll project that as being, we'll impose that idea on spontaneous love of raga bhaktas, and that's an offense against divinity, to think these pastimes are mundane, like the mundane affairs between men and women. So that means the mundane mind, the mundane intelligence, these mundane elements, they're covering jiva. But jiva in her pristine glory has mind, intelligence, senses, everything. The stranglehold that the mundane erotic principle has upon the heart can only be broken by the beauty, charm, and sweetness of Krishna conception. And that is very good news for us, that the original cause of everything is ecstasy personified, is loving and affectionate and full of ecstatic happiness, ever expanding, ever increasing happiness. And that we connect with that. What are we told? Hrishikena Hrishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchite. By engaging the senses in the service of Krishna. That will awaken their natural serving tendency, so that the mundane aspect gradually vanishes and diminishes and vanishes altogether, and the spiritual golden self comes out. And then from that position, dhira, undisturbed, no sense disturbance. Then when they hear the divine pastimes of Radharani, Krishna, and Braja Gopis, that will awaken spontaneous love, loving sentiments within them. They will say, well, these are very high things. Oh, yeah, right. The very high thing is called Krishna consciousness. It's a very high thing. It's the most high thing. It's the greatest type of happiness. My thinking at a particular stage was that the best thing I could do for anyone was to bring them to hear from Srila Guru Maharaj. And I thought, if they do, what more can I offer them than that? If I can somehow arrange that, bring them in connection with him, that'll be good for them, and I'll be there too, hearing what Guru Maharaj says. And so with great confidence and joy and verve, I would bring God brothers and God sisters to the lotus feet of Srila Guru Maharaj. And after bringing one such person, Srila Gurudev, he took us all, at the end of Guru Maharaj's talk, took us all downstairs for a prasadam. And then the idea was, after taking the prasadam, to return to Mayapur. But at the end of the prasadam, Gurudev came and he said, Guru Maharaj wants to see you again. That was very unusual. So we went back upstairs, like 3 of us, 4 of us, to see Guru Maharaj. And Guru Maharaj said, I was thinking, your earnestness to serve Mahaprabhu is so great that he has personally supplied this prasadam. So I asked Govinda Maharaj to set some aside for me. I'm also taking that. That's how Guru Maharaj was thinking. And then the one who was astonished at the stage was that the best thing I could do for anyone was to bring them to hear from Srila Guru Maharaj. And I thought, if they do, what more can I offer them than that? If I can somehow arrange that, bring them in connection with him, that'll be good for them, and I'll be there too, hearing what Guru Maharaj says. And so with great confidence and joy and verve, I would bring God brothers and God sisters to the lotus feet of Srila Guru Maharaj. And after bringing one such person, Srila Gurudev, he in the modern world went to try and tie identity to gender. That is not Krishna Das, Radha Dasi, Jive, Swarupai, Krishna, Nityadas. Spiritual identity is not tied to gender. But from this position, one can, whatever one's position is, begin hearing about Krishna from substantial devotees, from authoritative sources. Pravishta karna randrena swanam bhavam saro ruham Dunoti Shamalam Krishna Shalilasya Yata Sharat. Krishna conception through the ear enters the heart, and the flag of Krishna conception is planted there. And the experts have said, once this has happened, then it is a matter of time before Krishna conception establishes its supremacy and totality, exclusiveness over the whole heart. Gopi Bhav, Gopi Deho. When will Nityananda be merciful to me and release me from the illusion of worldliness? Well, Guru Maharaj put it in his sloka, Yadamyam Mahima Sri Bhagavatam Katha. bring them in connection with him. That'll be good for them, and I'll be there too, hearing what Guru Maharaj says. And so with great confidence and joy and verve, I would bring God brothers and God sisters to the lotus feet of Srila Guru Maharaj. And after bringing one such person, Srila Gurudev, he took us all, at the end of Guru Maharaj's talk, took us all downstairs for a prasadam. And then the idea was, after taking the prasadam, to return to Mayapur. But at the end of the prasadam, Gurudev came and he said, Guru Maharaj wants to see you again. That was very unusual. So we went back upstairs, like 3 of us, 4 of us, to see Guru Maharaj. And Guru Maharaj said, I was thinking, your earnestness to serve Mahaprabhu is so great that he has personally supplied this prasadam. So I asked Govinda Maharaj to set some aside for me. I'm also taking that. That's how Guru Maharaj was thinking. And then the one who was astonished said, oh, thank you so much. And Guru Maharaj said, thank you. He said, thank you, that doesn't sit well with me. Because he said, that presupposes 2 parties. And when these 2 parties with separate interest, when one party gets something from the other party, they say, thank you. And then he turned and he said in a very affectionate way, he said, we are all Mahaprabhu's men. Like that. And I thought to myself, he who is so exalted, when he says we, he's including us. But there are people in our group, when they say we, it does not include him. But he who is so exalted, he says, we are all Mahaprabhu's men. He is willing to include us in that. So, okay? When I was walking in San Jose once, and when punk rock was very prominent, and these 2 punks, they saw me with a shaved head, and they were like shaved, but then the saffron dress, and they came up to me and they said, what's this all about? What's this supposed to mean? And I said to them, total rejection of everything. And they said, cool. But what are you accepting? Yes, we agree. Yeah, this is all, reject it all. All right. And accept what? We hear so many things. Lord, do we hear so many things. On a day, there's so much, what is it? Like, you could call it noise, but sensory input, that hearing sound, and it's giving some impression to the heart about what is reality. What is the self? What is reality? What is the world? What is our place in it? But is it a reliable sound? Where does that sound come from? Where is it being broadcast? What is being carried with it? Herman Hesse had a book called Steppenwolf. And in that book, there's a man advertising something called the Magic Theater. And he goes through the town advertising the Magic Theater, and he's saying, Magic Theater, Magic Theater. He's saying, it's for madmen only, and the price of admission is your mind.
says, Yani Sha Sarvabhutanam Tasyam Jagrati Samyami, that what is night for one is the time of awakening for another, and vice versa. So it means there's a world where someone's awake in that world, and everything is understandable, perceivable to them. And it's like madness to ordinary people. But is it madness or is it something substantial? What makes sense in the brain of Einstein, that might appear to be madness to an ordinary person. But does that mean that Einstein is crazy or an ordinary person is crazy? If he writes one of his formula on the board, he's saying, what is that? These symbols, it looks crazy to an ordinary person. If he starts explaining one of his theories, you can say, what is he talking about? Right? But is it that he's mad and what he's talking about makes no sense? There's nothing of value there, nothing substantial? Or this is why we designate him Einstein, and we recognize that we may not be able to appreciate what is there, but those who have some ability or capacity, they can verify that there's something substantial there. These talks, they're like madness to the people in general, this sort of discussion, this sort of pursuit. But really here, the price, they're telling the price, for madmen only, price of admission is your mind. Here, the price of admission is submission, submissive oral reception, the willingness to hear. Admittedly, it's not faith fully developed in a proper sense, but the willingness to give a hearing, to submit to hearing Krishna conception from an authoritative source. That's the beginning of faith. Prabhupada once said, put it this way very simply, someone says, oh, let me hear, meaning referencing the devotees, oh, let me hear what these people have to say. That's enough. He called it submissive oral reception. Then there can be a transmission, the so-called heart-to-heart transmission. Really, your first connection substantially with reality is hearing from an agent, a divine agent. It's the path of seeing through the ear, seeing by hearing. That's how you see spiritually, by hearing. Jnane prayasamudapasana eva. Give up trying to understand him with your intellect and your brain, the infinite, or what the writer David Foster Wallace called, we consider ourselves the lords of our own skull-sized kingdoms. Put that nicely. Saraswati Thakur told puppy brain, trying to conceive the infinite in that way. But the Guru Maharaj brings the good news to us. The infinite can make itself known to the finite if he chooses. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medaya na bahuna shrutena. Not by so much discussion, not by mere intellect, but he reveals himself to whom he chooses, through whom he chooses. And his favorite agency for distribution is his devotee. In other words, it's simple. We hear different things. Someone's saying everything's like this, and they're giving you a story or a narrative that goes with that, someone else taking it in another direction. And something resonates with you or it doesn't. A scientist or scientific oriented, no, we've done experiments, All right, the fact of the matter is, you believe what you've heard. You didn't do those experiments personally. You read something, you heard something, it clicked with you, you believe it. So it's actually hearing. You hear a compelling narrative of competing narratives, and one resonates with you. Right? And it's story that drives us.
inside and outside. Story, because within story is possibility, right? Or prospect. Right? So the story presents the possibility of a particular prospect. This is very beautiful, because people say, well, what about this? What about that? What if someone lives like this? What if someone believes that? What if someone finds themselves in this situation? What if circumstantially, modern world, ancient world, this world, that, it doesn't, left, right, or center, up or down. Stan esti ta, whatever your situation is, begin hearing about Krishna from his agent, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vaishnava, but particularly the devotee, right? The authorized agents of the Absolute, right? Hearing from them, Shraddhan Vito Anushanaya Atabarnayaja. Then there's the awakening of faith, right? And its development. Without becoming acquainted with what it is and the means of understanding and verifying what this substance is, then one is not in a position to represent it or to make determinations with others in either direction, good or bad. Right? Therefore, we're told you have to put yourself under the guidance of a Vaishnava, a substantial Vaishnava who can determine, assess properly what is valuable, what is not valuable, what is substantial, what is not substantial, what is imitation, and what is real. That we must always remember. Gradations of seeing the infinite, of seeing Krishna. Radharani is giving her own evidence. Yadanu charita lila karna piyusha viprut. Hearing about Krishna, she said, what happens is, in this hearing, talking about being a conscious being, hearing, being aware. She's saying, if you put your consciousness to this, if in your consciousness Krishna conception enters, then what it does, a drop of this nectar lands on the heart. Right? One drop touches the heart. One drop of hearing Krishna nectar touches the heart. Like Krishna Karnamritam. That's what it means. Krishna nectar for the ear. Potency of hearing about Krishna is such that a drop of Krishna Katha on the heart will finish your life, your material existence. Viduta dvandva dharma vinashta. Finished. All attachment will be finished by one drop of hearing about Krishna. But it's all double entendre and ironic. You say, yeah, you're finished with this world. It's something to celebrate. One drop of this substance is so powerful, we'll finish with all illusion and all attachment, worldly attachments, etc. And then you become like these birds we see. They have no place. They're just wandering here and there, and they eat a little something. It's so pathetic. That birds, those homeless birds, you become, what is that? Paramahansa, extracting only the most essential thing. Their Krishna Nam is like Chintamani. You can have that transformative power. That's why we have to approach such personalities for Krishna Nam, to get something substantial. She's saying, a drop of this hearing about Krishna, what will be the end result? You'll turn into a Paramahansa Vaishnava. So powerful. And the purpose of life is to engage in this sort of culture. Madchita madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayanta tamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. Tushanti. Be like the same pleasure we derive from eating wonderful things, how wonderful we feel and satisfied. And ramanti, even that expressed by Rupa Goswami elsewhere, the natural attraction a boy has for a girl for a boy, this type of sweet, irresistible, seductive charm.
that they also experience. So the heart will be drawn into that plane by affection's force. Sri Krishna Karshini Chasa, and the inverse, a drop of that type of love and affection expressed toward Krishna is sufficient to capture the infinite. That's the method employed by the Braja Gopis. Tava katamritam, tapta jivanam, kavipir iditam, kalmasha apaham, sravana mangalam, srimadatatam, bhuvi grinanti te, burida jana. All of these things, they must be thematically consistent, and there must be connecting threads. They're not just random, anecdotal evidence for generic divinity. They're all going in a particular direction. And this should be noted. All suffering is due to separation from Krishna. All suffering. Whether it's the suffering of the conditioned souls or the anguish of separation experienced in the hearts of the Braja Gopis, the cause of all suffering is separation from Krishna. And the cure for separation from Krishna is to hear about him from his devotees, and then to kirtanam, reproduce what we've heard from his devotees. And those who are distributing this cure, they're giving the most beneficial thing in the world. Nacha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritama. Krishna tells Arjuna, who reveals the contents of this conversation we're having, they're most dear to me. And they're doing the greatest service to people in this world. Tvam bhakti yoga paribhavita hrit saroja. Saying the hrit means the heart, saroja. So it's saying the lotus of the heart. The heart is like a lotus. Prabhupada says in one place, the voice of the pure devotees is saturated with saffron mercy particles from the holy lotus feet of Krishna. And when that enters the ear, it's like sprinkling of these saffron mercy particles on the lotus of the heart, and it's blossoming. We should say that hearing from Krishna-loving people, from genuine devotees, that is really the beginning of seeing Krishna. Remember, seeing Krishna as an infinite. Right? Yang Shama Sundaram Achintya Guna Swarup. He has an inconceivable divine form. It's inconceivable, the beauty of Krishna. But by hearing from them, some impression comes to the heart. Back to Tvam Bhakti Yoga Paribhavita Hrit Saroja. Some impression is made there. Right? That's the seed of Krishna conception. But then there is quality and gradation everywhere. Quality of seed. So Guru Maharaj is quoting Hari Bhaktivilas saying, if superior quality of seed is available, no inferior seed should be planted. That's what consideration. When he was told someone who had been apparently in connection with Krishna consciousness for many years, resumed their position in the mundane world, even in the position of an atheist, he said, if the quality of seed is very high and it was planted very deeply, that's not possible. Or we'll take it, at least it will reassert, there's a question, dormancy, suspended animation. When someone asked Guru Maharaj, this devotee whose faith had been damaged, he wanted to know if Guru Maharaj had seen Krishna.